Hello, and welcome to my AP US History Final Project. In this video, I'm going to attempt to recap US history very quickly. Please note, do not try to use this video to study, as I am doing all of this from memory. I did not get any of this checked. You will probably lose more information than you actually gain. Also, I'm going to be uploading this video to YouTube because, I don't know, someone out there might find enjoyment out of this video, and who am I to, hide that from them. Alright, so we got a lot of stuff to cover and not much time to cover it, so, in the beginning, who cares? There's people on this rock. We don't know how we got here, and I don't want to open that can of worms, so we're just going to move on. The people start here in Africa, and eventually go on to dominate the entire Eurasian continent. The world freezes, which causes this spot between modern-day Russia and Alaska to freeze over, so people can cross over into the American continent. And now people are all over the world. Oh goody. Alright, we're going to fast forward a little bit because while important things did happen during this time period, I do not have time to go over them, so we're just going. We now enter the 13th century, and there's this guy named Christopher Columbus who wants to travel this way around the world instead of, that way, to get to India, China, and Japan. His reasoning? It's complicated. He goes to Portugal and asks if he can go on his venture, and Portugal says no. So he goes to Spain and asks if he can go on his adventure. And Spain says, sure, just don't waste our time. So Columbus begins his voyage across the ocean, and what does he discover but more ocean? However, eventually he discovers the West Indies and Japan. Eventually they come to find out that this is in fact not Japan, but instead a brand new continent that absolutely no one had discovered yet. And so Spain begins to colonize. Then Britain and France see this, and they say, we gotta get in on this. So they begin to colonize. However, Britain, France, they kind of don't have time to actually run colonies, so they just kind of leave them be for like 100 years. Then Britain and France got into a bit of a world war across the entire planet, which, to keep a long story short, Britain ended up winning, but now they're broke. Good news, they finally have time to start taxing some colonies. But the colonies have been working in relative autonomy for like 100 years, so they don't like the idea of being taxed by a tiny island across the ocean, and it just all catapults into the American Revolution, which, you know how that ends, so I'm not going to go over it because I don't have time. America is an independent country now, and it's the antebellum period, also known as the time between the American Revolution and the Civil War. General George Washington is the first president of the United States, and he does an amazing job setting a great foundation for later presidents to screw up. He leaves some rules for the colonies. Basically, don't get involved in foreign affairs, and don't get involved in some political parties. Look where that got us now. Political parties emerged, didn't even make it one presidency after Washington. Jefferson buys a bunch of land. There's a war in 1812 called, you guessed it, the War of 1812. Andrew Jackson declares war on the bank. A lot of things happen. I don't have time to go over it all. We finally get to a point in American history where the issue of slavery comes into question. Most northern states had basically outlawed them. They did not need slaves, at all. Whereas the South was economically dependent on slaves. States began being added in pairs so that the delicate balance between North and South states could stay, intact. Finally, this all came to a head when the newly formed Republican Party decided to elect this weird lanky guy named Abraham Lincoln to the role of presidency. And the southern states had had enough. Starting with South Carolina, they one by one began to secede from the Union, which kicked off the American Civil War. After the Civil War, we're nearing the end of the 1800s, which you know what that means, the Industrial Revolution. Technically, it's the second one. I didn't talk about the first one, which we're just going to pretend like it isn't important, even though it really is. This is why you should not use this video for studying. Anyway, the Industrial Revolution is a time where America went from using old, sad, lame, highly labor-intensive tools to create goods, and America began using new, amazing, beautiful, powerful metal machines that could create goods in a matter of minutes. With the Industrial Revolution, this means that people have time and money and leisure that they could spend on getting another car or a radio or a massive war raging across Europe. Wait, what? Okay, let's go back to Europe to figure out what the heck just happened. So we're back in Europe. They've been experiencing the longest period of peace that they've ever had. Good for them. They want to kill each other still, so there's a lot of tension. That tension eventually erupts into the First World War, and America goes back to Washington and stays out of it. Good for them. Then Germany decided to send a funny note to Mexico saying, "Hey Mexico, wouldn't it be cool if you decided to attack the United States or something like that? That'd be like pretty freaking rad, you know?" And it was intercepted by the British, and America basically said, "Alright, it's on." And they joined the First World War. Technically, there's other reasons that the United States joined the First World War, but we're just going to pretend that this is the only reason because I don't have time to go over the other reasons. America joins the war. The war ends. Woodrow Wilson takes a huge dump on the idea of staying out of foreign affairs. Then this German guy, who's very racist and has a very funny mustache, decided to take over the world, do World War I. Again, just 20 years later. We called it World War II. The Allies came back and they prevented that from happening. But it resulted in the emergence of two massive superpowers across the world. The United States and Russia. Both sides hated each other and they decided that they were going to kill each other with brand new technology. And by brand new technology, I mean massive bombs that will blow up the entire world. But wait, said both sides at the same time, presumably. I live on the world. I don't want to blow up the world, so let's just keep it cool. And let's have a nice Cold War for like 60 freaking years. Eventually, after, 60 years, tensions finally fall. The Soviet Union collapses, mainly because communism doesn't work, will never work, and it's just a flawed system in general. So, America begins fighting terrorists. 9/11 happens. Terrorists, war on terror keeps going. Political parties all want to kill each other. China and Russia are doing bad things. The world's on fire. There's a global pandemic that in the grand scheme of things really doesn't affect anything at all other than giving the government even more power. And now we're basically caught up to the present day. I'm done. Goodbye. Enjoy these bloopers. See ya. Hello, 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 and welcome to my AP US History Final Project. I'm going to attempt to recap U.S. history to the best of my ability, very quickly. I'm going to attempt to recap U.S. In this video, I'm going to attempt to recap U.S. history, very quickly. Please note, do not try to use this video to study, as I am doing all of this from memory. I did not get any of this checked. You will probably lose more information than you actually gain. Political parties emerged, didn't even make it one president after Washington. Jefferson buys a whole bunch of land. There's a war. Okay. Political parties emerged, didn't even make it one presidency after Washington. Jefferson buys a bunch of land. There's a war in 1812 called, you guessed it, the War of 1812. Andrew Jackson declares war on the bank. A lot of things happen. I don't have time to go over it all. American history is, like 300 years long. I don't have 300 years to go over every minute detail, so sorry, but Franklin Pierce is not going to be involved in this video. Well, now he is. I don't think I'm going to put this in the video. I think I'm going to cut this entire thing off because I'm just monologuing right now. I am going completely off script. I have no idea what I'm supposed to be saying. This is going to be in the bloopers probably. I'm just going to stop. I'm thirsty. I should get some water. And began using new, sexy, metal machines that could create goods in a matter of minutes. I don't know if I'm actually going to use that, because that's the line I'll use if I'm not a coward.